Excellent. So what we're going to move to is just walking through an example of the brainstorming culling process, because some of you didn't want to go into it, some of you did. So those of you who don't need to look if you think you've got it, you feel free to go. There we go. All right, so this is not an environmental training program at all, and I apologize, I didn't have time to make one up. But this is about a tax program that we had at United Way. And this, I'm just going to give you some examples of how it frames out. This should be familiar. This is essentially the performance measures grid, the quadrant, and it was a brainstormed list of things that we could do to measure how much, how well, and is anyone better off. So we brainstormed and put them in the right category. So again, how much was a number of activities, the number of clients. How well we did it had to do with satisfaction, the volunteers who were trained, the time frame for completion, etc. And then anyone better off is are people better in their condition, really. So in this case, it was that they saved money from having a free tax prep, that they got refunds. There was a goal of earned income credits that were underutilized. The data that drove that was that the gap between people who were tapping into earned income credit was significant between those that were eligible based on our estimate and actually getting that. And it means millions of dollars into the community. And then there was a way to divert money into savings account. The numbers next to each of these boxes is then we had our very small team at United Way vote and prioritize. So, they got 7 or 8 votes each. We did check marks or polka dots or whatever it was that we did and calculated those. Anything with a 5, you'll see that that meant that was a universal agreement that those were good ones. We moved to the next sheet. So if you'll page down to the next sheet. So this should also be familiar. This is that data development plan. So on the left-hand side are those measures that passed the first call. So anything that had probably a 4 or 5 moved over to this sheet. And again, we have some how muches, we have some how wells, and we have is anyone better off. And we just left the other ones behind. They don't get to come. We keep the history of it, clearly, but we don't bother talking about them anymore at this point. We did take a crack at what's the current status. Green meaning it's available. We can pull this up right now. Yellow, it's in a bunch of different places. We could probably come up with it if we had to. Might give us a couple days to come up with it. Red is it's not on our radar at all, and we're going to have to figure out how to collect that data. And then we had a conversation against data criteria, and this, while it's there's still a human element to this. I mean, there's still human judgment involved, but we talked about communication power. Is it believable and understood? Could a general person at town meeting understand this measure? Proxy power, does it represent something of central import to the work that we're doing? And then data power, can we actually get this data? Do we have the resources to get it in a timely, informative way that will help us pivot as the program's going on? And you'll see that there's highs and mediums and lows here. And this was sort of grouped. We did it through consensus. You could do it, you could put high, medium, low and take votes and do a majority win if that's your culture, or you could work towards consensus. With 5 of us on the team, we just work towards consensus. So we would do an initial conversation, could be just high, medium, low, 5, 3, or a 0. As a hand count, and if there were differences, we'd have a conversation. Why do you think this is high in communication power and you think it's low? All right, and so then you start to unveil some assumptions. You start to unveil understanding. Like you might have a marketing person in the room who says nobody cares about this, and you have the techie who says this is the most important thing, right? And so you start to negotiate whether it truly is high, medium, low, or what tweaks would have to happen to that measure to make it a high. The caveat I would tell you is on data power, just because you don't have it now, and I'll bring your eye down to those reds. So down below those reds, you can still have a high on that, even though you don't have it yet. So the question then becomes, we don't have it, but could we get it without an entire investment in a software system, hiring a new person? Could we do it with the resources we have now? Is it reasonable to expect that we could do that? And then it can qualify for a high. The next piece about this, that then you would sort of take a look and say, well, the highs have it. What's the highest scored measures? And those are likely the ones you want to go with, right? You'll notice here that we picked all of them. And so we had some disagreement about which ones to go forward to. And so you'll see that in the WHO, there are different initials about who was going to take that on. And so in a few weeks' time, those people who really felt strongly about that one, so SG really liked the fees saved, right? Even though they all came across as a medium. And so SG was going to go off and start collecting that data and present it to the whole group so we could pilot it and see if it told us something of import and if it made sense in our reporting to our funders, to our community, et cetera. KMG, that's me. I was more interested in the other ones, and I was responsible for collecting that data and bringing it back and making the case for those data points. So I'll pause there and say, does this, for those of you who had questions about the two-part process for culling and after you brainstorm, does this help? Any questions lingering?
What does the H/L mean? Maybe you said this, but I don't know.
That's a high-low. And so this is why we had some people who felt really strongly, and we didn't get to consensus on that one. And that became a data agenda item that we were going to pilot and see what happened. So I took those on. And I'm not sure why on data power, we should be able to get the refunds in the low. I think it's because we were working in partnership with 2 other organizations, and it was unclear whether they would be willing to aggregate that information and share it with us. So we had some partner issues there. And then you'll see that that last one, the dollars returned to household budgets and community, that was all low, and we took a pass on that. So we didn't take that one forward. So we did eliminate one based on the next to the last one on being low and not having it. Any other questions or comments? All right, and then we can go to the next page to take you through. Oh, we gotta do some twisting. So here's the grid again, and this one's modified to only bring forward the things that we actually collected, right? And so this was sort of the final report in terms of how much we did, how well we did it, and is anyone better off? And because it was the first year we did this, future years, we started comparing and having sort of trend lines and analysis going forward. But this, so you'll note that the first page had the brainstormed list. We kept it because down the road we might want to take some of those measures on or not. And this was our first pass at being able to tell a story. And then if you go down to the next page, this is at the conclusion, like midway through the program, and then at the conclusion we would meet and we talked about the data. And then at this point, we incorporated some of those 7 questions for the program performance to say what worked and what could we do to do better. And so in that case, we wanted to celebrate what had changed and what we wanted to keep, and then really wanted to come up with improvements for the next tax season. This went in the binder, and as we planned the next tax season, we were able to say, oh yeah, we said we wanted to do that. We did the asterisks talk about which ones we were gonna do. So we didn't do all of them. We did highlight which ones we were going to target, and that would help me in creating the budget going forward if there were budget items that needed to support those strategies going forward, or staffing considerations we needed to do, or partnership conversations we had to have. So for us, this became the roadmap for analyzing, reporting, budgeting, and planning next program season. So I'll stop with that and ask if you have any questions or comments, or if you can see that this could be a useful tool for your programs. And again, I think the value of documenting these things, these processes, your thought process, so that when you hand it off to somebody or you can refer to it, you know, it was so, such a relief. We did this for every single event, every single program. And we could just put it to bed, right? And then when we opened it up a year later, it was so well documented. Everybody knew exactly what we had decided to do next year. We didn't have to start at the beginning. We just built on it. And, you know, we'd have to take a look and say, has anything changed that impacts the decisions we made? Otherwise, go forward. The other thing that was really beautiful as we progressed with this was when it came time to report for my funders and my grants and do our annual appeals, I would literally turn around to my bookcase, pull out the binder of RBA, and I had it all there for whatever I was asking for grants or having conversations with partners and funders and doing the reporting. It was kind of lovely, I have to admit. so, so that's another benefit to this.